On today's episode of eCommentary, I am joined by someone I've been following on LinkedIn for it feels like years now. He is from Denmark, so we're both in the same country. He's also moved to the right side of Denmark recently.
Yeah.
Andreas Nielsen from Confect.io. Confect is probably one of the, I was going to say best kept secrets, but you guys are actually becoming more and more and more popular, and more brands I'm seeing are sharing case studies and that they're working with you. But for those of people listening, can you tell us a little bit more about Confect, what it is you do, and how you've been growing so fast?
Totally. And thank you for the great introduction. It's the first time ever I've been introduced as someone who moved to the right side of Denmark. So that's great. We actually today got marketeer number 10,000 joining us at Confect. So that's really awesome. Yeah, but basically we're a design tool for catalog ads. So a tool where you can just design your ads, like if it was in Photoshop or in Canva or whatever, but across all your products in the catalog ads. So you finally don't have these like bland and generic product images on a white background, but it can actually do some cool stuff to them. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much it.
Confect is one of those things that whenever we work with a brand that's super focused on like aesthetics, and they push us so hard on not necessarily being able to run catalog ads because they have that problem. They hate the white background e-com shot. We always push them towards Confect because it's a great way to actually customize how your catalog ads will look. And we've also seen that when brands do this, the performance tends to go up pretty drastically. Now, you also have so much data. Like you mentioned, there's 10,000 marketers using the tool. And you just released this absolutely killer Black Friday, Cyber Monday report. Our creative team absolutely loved it. I think we've been sharing so many charts with our brands and our clients. It's definitely featured in most of our Black Friday prep. But can you tell us a little bit more about the report, how you put it together, but also, if you would, share some of the key insights from your side?
So yeah, we kind of like, we sat down, analyzed last Q4, so Q4 2024, and looked at like, what did different advertisers do and how did their ads perform? And so we took all the different e-commerce companies that are working with Confect and analyzed all their ads. We were looking through $250 million in ad spend. And I think it was 44 billion impressions. Straight up just looking at what are the top performers doing, what are the bottom performers doing, and what do we see trends going into Q4? Like how good is ROAS when you get into Black Week versus the Christmas weeks afterwards versus like the weeks leading up to it? How are the CPM update or developing and so on? So just analyzing a lot of ad spend, primarily e-commerce companies, and seeing what actually works during this period.
Yeah, and I can remember like this report, we followed it every single year, and it just seems to get better and better. But I think one of the funniest things is actually seeing how the market responds to your report. I remember going back, is it 2-3 years ago, and there was like a Confect stat about how using, I think it was yellow in your catalog ads and your Black Friday messaging had an increase in ROAS. And then that year it was like everyone's ads were yellow. And I was like, that's some influence going on there. So what nuggets have you got for us this year?
Yeah, thanks a ton. It is like some are also overanalyzing a bit. So we're trying to figure out like what are the right questions to ask in order to not give, answers that could be misread sometimes, because obviously there's always this like it depends on a lot of things. So we went up a level like above this time and didn't look too much into the creatives themselves, but more on the strategies people were using. So for instance, how much were they spending on brand versus conversion campaigns? For instance, how many ads were they running? How much were they spending at catalog ads? How much quality did their catalogs have in terms of product fields? All of these different things in order to understand more about the advertisers themselves. How are they doing? And a bit less on the creators themselves, because it all depends, especially with some of Meta's new updates. Like you should not always use yellow as an example. So yeah, it is definitely developing, definitely.
And I think that was like the way that we've always looked at it, the report, and where I found it really, really useful is when you discuss like offer strategy, there's so much insight from the catalog ads regarding the eternal discussion that's going on is always, do we show price saving? Do we show discounts? what other factors matter. And it's always good having it in your back pocket for when you're having these discussions, because you can pull on a secondary data point and say, actually, the guys at Confect have shown that, it's better to show this, or what have you. And that's where we found it really, really useful.
It's awesome to hear. That's why we make it. So yeah, I'm very glad to hear that.
And if we were going to sort of share some of those key insights in terms of like the composition of a winning Black Friday catalog ad, from your side, what are things that people absolutely must be putting into their catalog ads going into the busiest time of the year?
I think a general rule of thumb for us is when you're looking at Black Week specifically, it has to be as commercially driven as possible, the design. People in this week, they're looking for great deals and they want to know what the product costs basically, and then like how much they save. What we see on average is that the catalog ads showing price, for instance, perform 67% better when looking at return on ad spend, and they also have a 31% better cost per purchase. Like price, the same with like savings and so on, obviously works very well. What's quite interesting is that sales always work. So like what we see is the performance when you're running a sale design versus non-sale design. Like the line pretty much follows each other, whether it's Black Week or not. So sales designs are just a multiplier you always have. So if you have products on sale, just always show a sale design for your products on sale. Whereas the more like price and so on, where you could hide it a bit, like outside Black Week and so on, we just see that during Black Week, price definitely works. And it also works outside Black Week. Like normally we see a 41% increase in return on ad spend. But during these periods where people are just looking at what they need to buy, it's very impactful, especially if you compare it to like the weeks afterwards, where it's getting into Christmas. We actually see that the effectivity of showing prices decrease. On average, like return on ad spend doesn't increase as much because people are shopping for other people and not themselves. So it's quite interesting how it's very commercial during that week, and then it becomes other things that are important during the Christmas weeks.
Is that where you start to see people that move to more like seasonal catalog designs can see a little bit more of a lift, or moving to, different? It's almost as if the messaging from Black Week is very price promotion, and that's what the decision is based on: who has the best deal. And if you have a really good deal, you've got to make sure you create your asset in a way that is super, super obvious. But then there's sort of a seasonal element to catalog ads that we always like to switch on after, where it's like getting into the Christmas spirit. And if there is fast delivery, that's where your labels come in, or delivered by Christmas come in, so that you answer the queries that people have before the period. Is that what you see as well from your side?
Yeah, definitely. So like relevance of the ads are just so important. And what works very well as one thing for relevance is like the seasonality of it. So understanding that, hey, now it's autumn, so obviously I'm going to promote these products like my coats and winter jackets and so on with an autumn design. Then we move into Halloween. So we have a Halloween offer. Then we go into Black Month, Black Week, Black Weekend, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and then over to Christmas. So whatever you can do to actually like make it make sense for the consumer why they're seeing this ad right now, the better we typically see the ads perform. So like this whole fairy tale of an always on evergreen, we just never see it work that well compared to actually being good at updating your creatives.
Yeah, and I'm always really surprised when I talk to a lot of the brands, and
I
think there's a lot of people out there that have been hit really, really hard by Andromeda in terms of like Meta updating the ad engine, them struggling to reach new audiences. And when you actually ask them, so what are you doing about like catalog ads to broad audiences? Their answer is always like either they're running that white background DPA and it's getting stuck, or they're not doing it. And it just feels like such a good solution in terms of like, it's not labor intensive for a design team to create, a beautiful template that's relevant. And then you can then distribute that to, infinite combinations. If you think about with one design and 250 products, you've got essentially 250 unique elements that can reach different users. And then it's like, okay, then we put 3 into the mix, and all of a sudden, like, you have the diversification. And I think that it's so underutilized. Have you seen, like, especially post July this year, more and more people are starting to lean into this, or are we, a little bit ahead of the curve? And have I just given away a really good tactic?
No, but definitely, like we definitely see some advertisers from the old meta school struggle, and then the ones that are actually leaning into like how do algorithms work and how should we like what should we feed them in order to perform better. So the gap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So the ones that are still relying on actually doing like or trying at least with the Advantage Plus, always flicking on, yeah, I suggest all ages and so on. But the ones that tries to do very niche targeted like narrow targeted ads, it just never works anymore. Like you need to understand how do algorithms work and then how can you feed better data and more data to them. And catalog ads is just a great way of doing that because you have all the products and especially if you have different designs as well. The and more I think what data you feed into the catalogs about the products and so on, like if you start understanding how the algorithms work and try to help the algorithms, then especially with Andromeda, but also just in general, like you see better results. And I think in general places, like we've heard a lot about creative is the new targeting, and it's now more true than ever with the new updates or relative new updates. What we see, for instance, is that the top performing advertisers are having twice as many ads running as at the same time as the bottom performers. So there's obviously some correlation in here that if you are performing great on Meta, you would obviously create more ads, and if you're like not performing too well, you would obviously turn off some ads. But there is still some causation here that like you're better at feeding different ads to the algorithms. We see the same with the product sets. So top performing advertisers there are having 5.5 times more different product sets during Black Week compared to the bottom performers. So they don't just have products that they actually like tailor it. So, okay, it's Black Monday. We have great offers on all our gaming products. So here you see the gaming products and the ad copy is actually about gaming and the design is actually about gaming. So the algorithms just understands way faster than, wait, I need to show this to gamers. So the more you actually like lean towards this, the better performance you see. We also see it with just the catalogs themselves. So what we see is that the catalogs that have a lot of product fields, so like category, gender, age group, color, energy efficiency class, whatever you can give the algorithms, perform 80% better than the average catalog. Whereas the catalogs that just have the minimum requirements perform 27% worse than your average catalog. So it's just the more you feed the algorithms, the better your meta ads will work.
Why do you think that is in terms of the, feed enhancements? Why do you think that helps Meta to work?
In general, like the power of catalog ads is you have so much structured data that the algorithms can start learning from. And especially the smarter Meta gets and the more they, oh, we've made this new cool things with NVIDIA and now we can do stuff and wow, it's GPU and stuff like that. Like reading half of these updates are more about the stock and naming cool buzzwords, but still, like the smarter the algorithms get, the more structured data you need to provide to the algorithms. And catalog ads are just extremely smart because you might have 2,000 products with very structured data about what category is this product, which price point is it, which color is it, together with all the data around it. So who typically looks at products like this or engage with these products and so on. So the moment you're into running shoes from New Balance on sale for a muddy weather, the faster the algorithm can just find that specific product in the catalog ad versus like making static stills where you're just like, if you're making 4 different images, you're extremely good nowadays.
Yeah, and that's what I always try to explain to brands is that I always try to tie it back to their own browsing habits. So like this weekend, I was looking at it's getting cold. I was looking at a vest and I don't buy a vest, but I go onto Instagram and then all of a sudden I'm getting vests from this brand, vests from this brand, vests from this brand, all dynamically. And what I try to explain is that like, if you don't have all that feed information in your own feed, you miss out on those opportunities that come from your competitors. And it's kind of like when you understand that, you want to make your feed as enriched as possible with signal data so that you're making it easy for Meta to help you to steal that customer from a competitor who didn't convert.
Definitely. And it can also be from like not even competitors, but even like marketplace, let's say. So if you if you're looking for Nike Air Max, for instance, then like actually getting catalog ads for Nike Air Max or whatever. So it's just there are so many signals out there that are just 10 times, well, like a trillion times easier to process for the algorithms compared to static stills.
Yeah. And I think also one of the other big challenges with Andromeda is that everybody's talking about creative sort of diversity. And I think from like a brand marketing perspective, brand marketers are really they're getting a bit stressed out by what is being asked of them from performance teams, in terms of like you need to do this, you need to try this hook, or you need to try lo-fi, hi-fi, influencers, all sorts. And actually, catalog ads can be a really great route for people to maintain that like distinctive brand assets through um, trialing something new. So one of the use cases that we've really sort of we love for fashion is where you're running a collection ad and it's a specific shoot that you've taken for a specific collection, and then you match the actual product images underneath from the catalog with a template that aligns with the original collection image or video, and it just feels so much more sort of cohesive. You understand what the brand is. So, like, yes, catalog ads are unbelievable for performance, but they're also amazing for like tying in like distinctive brand assets and improving recall. Again, that's where it's like this is a go-to, and that's why we keep going back to it, that this is a really good route for both brand and performance.
And I really like how you and your team are thinking about it, and like you're coming up with some very clever use cases of it, where it's just not just about like performance short term, but also looking at it from a brand perspective. Because you have, for instance, these beautiful videos, which is very high level production. You spend a ton of money making them, and you really want your consumers to see it. And just figuring out how to actually use it the best way possible for this world we're living in right now, with the algorithms being as they are and so on. It could also be mixing them up with a product level video, so a video catalog ad and so on. So it's just like there are so many clever use cases out there where you just need to like think 2 or 3 steps ahead the like
And I think what
dimensional marketeer that are only thinking about performance or only thinking about brand, because then you're missing out on a lot of things.
and you've just mentioned the V word, video. And I think that most people, when they think about catalog ads, they're thinking about product shots and very sort of, what can you do in terms of customizing those? But over the
Product shots
last,
haunting you all over the internet typically, but yeah.
yeah, but over the last, it's a little bit over a year, I think, when I started to hear about video product ads. And then, of course, I think Confect were one of the first people to get on the actual beta with Meta for it. But video catalog ads is probably an area that nobody is tapping into. Can you just explain what they are, how to get involved with them, and how you can use them as well?
Yeah, definitely. And so what it is just catalog as we know them, as you said, like with products, but with videos instead of images. So instead of showing a flat image of the product, you can show a video of the product. And what is nice about videos is that you can give so much more information in a single like piece of content instead of a flat image where you can only have so much content. And we marketeers tend to add a ton of content or information to an image anyway. So we'll add Trustpilot scores and shipping and customer service and price and name and yada, yada, yada. But with a video, you can actually add it in a great way where it's just not just cluttering all over, making your brain explode. So it's just videos for all your products, where Meta again can find the product you're most likely to buy, but show it in a video format instead of just the image.
For fashion brands, this is killer because, again, biggest complaint from a fashion brand with product ads is that it doesn't truly show how the product moves. It's a flat pack shot. And then when you have the models moving in the clothes and you can see how the shirt or the dress moves, it's actually super compelling in terms of ways to sell it. We've been really impressed with those. And I think brands like Arket do them really well. They always have big Arket logo and then they have just the model catwalking towards you. And it's like, okay, I see it. Who else is doing catalog video ads well?
I think one of the best brands I know of is Baumann Fatgarten, a Danish brand. Like they're also doing the same. Also fashion, they're having a model walking around details, shots, but they're also switching up with the product information shown in a very natural way. So, like starting off with the logo, then going towards the name and the price of the product and so on. So, actually, like both having the visual part being extremely great to look at, but also having the more like information pieces about it. Because I typically see two ways that brands are going. Either they're adding information and kind of like, a display banner, oh, cool, let's add something in that's bouncing or whatever. Or we're seeing brands going the other way where it's just, only the model walking around, for instance. And I think doing a mix of those where you're providing just the right context to what this product is about, and then also sharing the product in a better way, either by just shuffling through images or having a product video works very well.
This is one of the big projects I'm trying to crack at the moment, is actually like with the enhancements with Veo and Sora, using that as a way to create these videos. Brands, like, they don't think about the video ecom shot. So then it's like, right, you've got that static. And I think that Veo now is at a stage where you can take that static ecom shot, pumped in, I want the model to walk to the camera, and then it becomes video. I haven't cracked it yet. And it's like my passion project is like, okay, how am I going to do this? Like, how can I do it in a way that it's not going to break the bank either? Because reprompting on Veo also takes a bit. For me, it's like a really quick way to get into video, like catalog ads. First you need the video to be able to run the placement. But I think it's almost there.
Definitely. Like we are very close. I think we always look at it at a big scale because we're dealing with like thousands of companies, and they're also having like thousands or hundreds of thousands of products. So you need like not only 90% of the videos to be great, but like 99% plus of the videos to be great. Like the way to start would just be to like look at your 200 best-selling products and get started there, because then you could still somewhat do prompting manually and fix a few mistakes or whatever you want to change. And I think we're seeing models that are good enough for a 10-second video if you prompt it once or like twice or 3 or 4 times, and you can do that with 30 products. So if you don't have it, you can do it, but we still see performance being great if you're, for instance, not even having the video per se, but just shuffling through some of the additional images or incorporating other ways. So still showing the still product images, but in a video context where you might be adding a more branded video in the beginning, like you mentioned with the collection ads, for instance, or just providing very nice and pleasing ways of showing like more information as you go through the video, basically.
Yeah, there used to be that style around, what was it, like early, I'm showing my age here, 20, I think it's like 2018, where you could upload an a static image, and then you would put like a template on the background that like had a slow move and the product in the fore. And then it really drew your attention in, because it's like, is that still, or is something moving? And then it's like, okay, now I've got it. So tricks like that can also help you out with the dynamic video ads.
Exactly. And I think especially like, again, we marketers really want to talk about the products, and we're wanting to add so much information, and just like keeping the design simple and just adding the information when it's needed. So you probably don't need 8 pieces of information the first second, but actually being able to use all the 15 seconds, people will watch it if they're interested in buying it. So yeah, there's a lot of great use cases for video catalog ads.
What we've seen from brands when they go on to use things like dynamic creative within catalog, either video or static, is they're always surprised by the uplift in performance, by calling out what they want to call out, or being able to sort of tap into the markets that they want to. So ahead of Mother's Day, having assets where it says like Mother's Day gifting, you shouldn't underestimate what that actually can do for your algorithm in terms of finding customers. And this is where you can really sort of deploy these tactics in coming into Black Friday and into Cyber Monday. Is like, call out your customer, call out like the best Christmas presents from, and the algorithm can work with that info, and if you stack creative, then you've got all of the metadata and all the catalog data running. You're in a really good position there. I had a look at some stats from one of our brands, and we started to work with them in October last year, and they ran an October sale last year where only 2% of spend was through catalog ads. And I just had a look before I jump in on today, and this is a brand that's doubled in size. And this month they're on sale again, and they have spent 30% of their spend this month is through Confect based DPAs, and it's accounted for 38% of their revenue this month. Insane. So from 3% to like 30% of spend. It's pretty massive, right?
It is. It is. And we see top performers are doing this and more and more and more. So for instance, especially if we're looking at a week like Black Week, we see that top performing advertisers spending approximately twice the share of their ad spend on catalog ads compared to bottom performance. So we just see like almost a beautiful linear trend
Trend line.
line of the more you spend on catalog ads, the better a performance group you're typically in. So actually like leaning in and allowing these dynamic formats, because again, the algorithms do favor them because they work, because the algorithms have a lot of information and data to work with here, instead of, again, just three stills that you spend a lot of time on, but it's, again, only three pieces of data instead of like hundreds of thousands of data points for the algorithm. So yeah, it definitely makes sense. And
When you learn that this approach works well, you actually tailor your strategy to it. And I think, again, I think you covered a little bit of info regarding like the upper funnel spend. But what we've done is we've completely pivoted sort of strategy leading into sale periods where actually we want to focus so much budget higher up the funnel because we want to drive the initial attention and the initial browse so that they then filter down into probably still top of funnel. But when you then come onto your sale period, by switching on, the budget really into those catalog ads, you then capture all of that demand that you spent the previous sort of 2 months creating. And that was our initial thoughts behind, okay, this is how we're going to deploy catalog ads. But then we started to notice also that you don't just have to sit middle of funnel, bottom of funnel in sale periods. Actually, these assets are really, really good. And we kind of touched on it before about like stealing demand that other competitors have built. If you have a great offer or a great product or faster delivery, by pushing that top of funnel, you tap into like this in-market audience that's just ready to convert. And then you see again, actually, we've got scale in these creatives. And it's been huge for us this year. Like this is like one straight out of our playbook: build demand, capture demand, and then get a bit braver and push more spend up the funnel with the catalog ads.
But I think this makes us so damn clever, and we're seeing too few brands doing it, because on one hand we see that catalog ads are great at making people buy. So if the main objective is for people to buy right now, catalog ads is typically the ad format that is performing the best. But then what we also see is that the best performing advertisers are also putting spend towards brand awareness campaigns on Meta. So it is very much like for instance, a data point on it, when we're looking at Black Week specifically, we see that the advertisers that actually spent money, like a significant amount of money on brand awareness campaigns before Black Week, on average during Black Week, they have a 139% higher return on ad spend compared to the brands that didn't invest in brand awareness. So we just see that, okay, this brand thing, even though we can't measure it, then it definitely works, because we just see that the brands that are investing in it, they are magically seeing a way better performance, especially when people are ready to buy, for instance, during Black Week. Then I trust way more the brand I know compared to the unknown brand. So this whole like too smart performance marketeers talking about how we can also build brand via conversion campaigns. Nah, you can't. Like you need campaigns for brand, but then you also need to capture the demand, and catalog ads are great at that.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, if you think about it, at the moment, you can pay, I'll use pounds, but like a brand awareness campaign will be probably £2.50 max. So that's £2.50 per 1,000 impression. If you look at a typical conversion CPM now, best case scenario, you're 5x that. Worst case scenario, you're 10. And if you're in the US, you're probably 50x that. So then it's like you just can't reach enough people to build that brand recall. And then it's just it's just a fight on price. Can I be the cheapest? It's a race to the bottom. And that's where like that's why I'm such a big kind of advocate of brand and really looking into like how do you create the memories for people that will inform their purchasing decisions. And I don't think, you post about this on LinkedIn and you really take some fire for it, but everything that we've seen, like this works. You just need to have a bit more, what do you say, like a stronger stomach to be able to go through that period because it does make it uncomfortable to report for 2 months that like, ROAS isn't as high as it previously was. But then when it starts to hit, you're like, it's paid off. We've made more revenue in this month than we did if we'd have run performance for 3 months. So that's kind of our approach to strategy. And I'm a really big believer in this.
And it totally makes sense. It's going to be even more interesting when we can start having like great MMM models and so on. So we can actually like start looking into the numbers because it's still too premature to understand it fully. But we just see that brand works. And there's also, as you said with the CPMs, for instance, like when you understand that Meta is an auction, so you're buying their inventory and everyone are only bidding for the conversion inventory. So we see like on average, I think it's somewhere around 90% of the average ad spend from an e-commerce company that is put towards conversion campaigns, like approximately 90%. That's totally crazy. So you have 10% left for lead generation and for traffic and for brand awareness and so on. I can't remember if it's 80 or 90%, but it's something like that. So if you understand that and you understand that, wait, Meta is like, they're just like, you're just buying into an auction, like then it's such a good, like it's a steal to start investing in brand awareness if you believe in the long-term effects of it.
Yeah, that's it. And it is hard. And I think that until you've seen it work, you will always say that performance is the only way to go because, and I think that also, I think the US also has a really big part to play in why we get a certain sort of route around performance being the only way. Because when we look at the United States, it's such a big sort of total addressable market. It's enormous. So that if you are working performance, you probably never ever cap out like in market. You just share your piece and you can get to 10 million in size and you just with people in market. But I think when you come to Europe and to the UK, you really see that actually like there's only so far I can go with performance before I start to see like a diminishing return. And that's where investing in brand allows you to go further. But because all of the big profiles on Twitter and on LinkedIn are in the States and creating the YouTube videos, it just becomes this echo chamber that performance is the only way and brand's just a waste of money.
Yeah, definitely. And like we are far, far, far away from like at least in retail and e-commerce, we're far away from Les Binet's like 60/40 and so on. So like there are so much money invested in conversions. Oh, a big share invested wrongly in conversions because it could have been invested way better in conversions. But like also brand is such a big underinvestment.
Yeah, I didn't expect to be having a brand conversation today. That's definitely a really kind of a nice twist to it, but it also shows that, the product is built around solid marketing principles. Now, we've kind of teased a lot on how good these things work with the product from Confect. And I think that's why we've been using you guys for years, is because we get brands on, it works, it drives sales. But there'll be people listening that are sort of liking what they're hearing. They're liking the numbers that we're talking about. One of the questions they'll probably have is like, is it too late to get set up on Confect for Black Friday? And sort of typically how long does it take for them to get involved? What do they need to do? What do they need to have in place to make sure that they can, be successful going into like a really high pressure time of the year?
Yeah, great question. And I think like the best day to get started was always yesterday. So now that isn't true, then it's way better to get started. Like the earlier you can start testing, the better. But what we see more and more of, like we always recommend people do an A/B test of like how does your designed catalog ads perform compared to your business as usual, just the product image. And what we on average see is a 31% increase in return on ad spend. Like when you're comparing a design catalog ad to your business as usual, that's just median. But the ones that are doing it the best, like when we look at the top 20% performers, they typically see a 98% increase in return on ad spend. And the reason is that they actually, like, it's fairly simple. They just do more creative variation. So they just do 3 or 4 different designs and let it run, maybe even in the same Advances Plus campaign. so the algorithms can choose from them. So like, to answer your question, it's not too late to get started, but if you could like add 2 or 3 different designs, so you're not just putting, for instance, all the information into one design and then calling it a day, but actually trying to make a design that's focused very much on price, another one that's focused very much on the brand or the product itself, like the features. The more variety you can add it, the easier it is to get started later, because the algorithm still has 3 or 4 different designs, so you don't need the learnings to understand what to put into the designs.
The way that we always approach it is you start with Confect with some form of like logo or copy or price, keep that design consistent. You've then got like typical white background, which you can test against. And then the next go to is absolutely like getting your lifestyle, so non ecom imagery in, applying the same text, logo, pricing, and running those. And then you start to learn, okay, like the lifestyle image really informs, the user. They really like that. That's what we want to then work into our Black Friday creative. So we know that, it's really important to keep running some BAU during Black Friday. What we've seen is actually if we keep our lifestyle imagery just intertwining some sale messaging, that's one of our top performers. Again, I'm giving away some secrets here, but the lifestyle image with sale messaging is like, that's a go-to in our playbook because aesthetically it looks good. It's got the components of price and it's almost like a winning combo. In terms of like feed and feed infrastructure, what do people need to have sort of in place? Do they need to spend a bit of time on their feed before working with Confect, or actually is it something that they can do as they go along?
You can always do it as you go along. So especially because typically they have the things that are the most required, and then it's all the nice to haves that are missing. I think the most important thing is not really what you have, but what you actually do with it. And like, I know that sounds simple, but we see like way more of people having way more data than what they're using, instead of them being like, no, we don't have this very, very, very important data point we very much need in order to get started. So it is way more about just like utilizing the things you already have in the feed, because you typically have great stuff there, and then you could always improve on it to make it even better. But
Too
and I
many
think brands are not utilizing their data because it lives like for the algorithm, so they can see it, but the consumers cannot see it. So they don't know this, like that this product won an award, or they don't know that this product is on sale, for instance. Or when you're seeing a telecom brand, like which of the iPhones am I actually looking at? Like, is this a Pro or not? Is it a Max? Is it a 12 or a 13 or a 14 or whatever? So like actually getting started is way better, and then you can always progress later on.
Okay, I'm going to help people listening at home and I'm going to go with something a little bit more quick fire. Okay, so I'm going to talk about like a vertical, say fashion. And what I want you to do for me is you give me your absolute must haves in a catalog ad for fashion. And we'll run through fashion, electronics, nutrition, skincare, and just whatever jumps to your mind. So we'll start off with key components of a fashion ad.
Awesome question, Andy. I would add 2 things. If I had to get started, I would add 2 different layers, or what you could say. I would add for the fashion brand, I would add for the top funnel, I would make a version with showing off the lifestyle images of the product, together with more like branded elements in it. And the more mid bottom funnel you go, I would add the pack shot instead of the lifestyle, actually, together with the price. So in a fashion example, I would utilize it like that, because we typically see that additional images are very great for top funnel and building interest, whereas they don't perform as well for people that already know which product they want to buy. And price, vice versa, we typically see a lower click-through rate when you show the price, but the traffic you get from the people that actually clicked on an ad showing the price are just way better because they align directly in the ad, whether they want it or not.
Nice. Let's do nutrition, protein brand. What needs to go into their catalog ads?
Depending on what kind of brand you are, what we typically see, for instance, with a brand like Bulk in the UK, is that they're very great at, like, some of their ads are showing very technical, like feature specific, how much protein per gram or per kilo or whatever is there in this product. And they also mix it with reviews that are solving like the real pain points. So for instance, does this protein powder actually taste good? Or does it taste like it smells like really ugly and you have to hold your nose when you're drinking it? So for instance, brands like Bulk are great at showing very technical ads together with also very like soft, more pain point related ads.
Okay, and then electronics. So you are an electronics retailer. You've got multi brands under your store. What needs to go into the catalog ads?
Typically, the brand logo is extremely important because there's such a big difference between like people buying Apple stuff versus Samsung stuff, for instance. And like features is a big thing as well, or like at least the three most important bullets for each product. So because they're typically filled with specs that are important for the people buying.
And
And
I think
actually, on another level, especially with if you have a big catalog, which a lot of electronics have, like putting them into categories. So, for instance, having your and I think
kitchen
products and your gaming products typically also works very well because people buying gaming stuff, they like are way more likely to buy if they see, this very LED colors, neon colors everywhere type of designs.
nice. And then finally, this is a selfish question because we've got a
And I
lot
think
of toy retailers. So they children's toys, multi brand again. What should they be putting into their Black Friday ads?
again, now I'm becoming an expert in this because of my new daughter. First of all, I can tell it's the mom that is deciding what is getting bought or not. So don't design for the kid, design for the mom first and foremost. There are definitely brand preferences, and then also just like understanding the product. It depends on how experienced the mom it is. But like for instance, we don't know anything about like is this for someone that's 6 months old or 2 years old when we see a toy or a piece of clothing? Like actually making it easy to understand what am I buying here because you typically need a lot of experience in order to tell a body, for instance, in size 6 months versus size 3 years.
It's the information and making it really easy for people to understand, but also like speed. Speed of delivery, I think, is super important. I know that, we've got two kids and all of a sudden they need welly boots, they need gloves, they need everything, and they need it yesterday because the nursery's written a nice little note in your wardrobe to say that they always do it in such a child-friendly way. It's always written. Harrison had really cold hands today. It's never like go out and buy some gloves. It's always like
No, no, exactly.
that style, and then it's like okay, I can't wait a week for these gloves to arrive. I need something that's coming like tomorrow. And if you say to me these gloves are what they need, they're ready, they'll be there with you in 24 hours. It's like check, bought.
Exactly.
Next
Here's my
challenge.
credit card. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the other areas with brands, especially when they're sort of multi-brand stores or multi-brand retailers, we also really enjoy like curating product sets around the brand. And then what we ask our designers to do is like imagine brand at the top of my head is like Little Dutch. So that's a children's toy company. And we then look at, okay, this is Little Dutch. This is Little Dutch's brand aesthetic. We then want to design the product set so that it really like speaks to like this is Little Dutch. And then when we then run these multi-brand product sets, so like product set for each brand, aesthetic for each brand, they work so well because it just feels like okay, yeah, that's the look that I want when I'm buying Little Dutch toys for the nursery. So again, like not being afraid to sort of look at if you're selling an iPhone, look at how Apple position the iPhone and then create your product template around that is something we've seen work.
And I think especially for multi-brand retailers, what we typically see is that like the power of multi-brand retailers is that you know a lot about all the different products and you have the overview of the market. Whereas like the D2C and
Like
I think
single
brands, they like very focused on selling this one brand, whereas you have the power of actually being able to offer all of them. So you kind of can help the consumer find the best fitting one. So we typically see that like also things like price is extremely important, especially compared to D2C brands, because like you're helping them navigating the market. Price is obviously very important in that. Whereas for a D2C brand, it's way more about like why to buy
and
the
I think
specific product from us.
it's making that experience just feel like the experience that they deserve from the brand that they're looking at. I think this episode's been absolutely jam-packed with like nuggets, and I think there's so many good tips throughout it. I guess my big worry finishing the sort of rounding things out is that we've missed something really, really important. So the way that I avoid missing something really, really important is I get to ask you, what's one thing you think that brands maybe don't understand or should really kind of look into regarding catalogs and leaning into catalogs?
It's an awesome question, and it's also a big question. I think the biggest thing is that many still see it as a kind of always on. So we have this ad that might grab some conversions. We can run it always, and it's an always on evergreen thing that just keeps running as it is. But you miss out on so many opportunities if you don't actually understand how catalog ads work and also optimize for it. So improve the catalogs, improve the designs, make various different designs, and try out some of these like newer formats like adapt to placement, where you can actually make story look great instead of making it look like shit. Which the square tiles are you doing? Or like video catalog ads, like we talked about. So actually, like understanding why catalog ads are performing better and leading into that instead of just being a bit angry that they're performing the best, but they also look ugly and your brand marketeers are very mad at you and they want you to turn it off and like the whole fight. So actually understanding catalog ads because
And I
the
think,
better Meta gets at algorithms, the better catalog ads will perform as well. So yeah, better get started.
yeah, without a doubt, the most screenshotted complaint that we get in our Slack channels is that catalog ad, where it has like the 6 squares. Is it 6 or 8 squares in
Yeah,
a 9 by 16?
yeah, they have so many variations and they're ugly, all of them. They also have full on reels and so on. They're doing a lot of crazy stuff.
Yeah. And then what happens is that you get that screenshot of like the 8 in the stories, and then the brand really, especially if they're very sort of into the details of design, they then start telling you things like, we need to exclude the story placement. And as soon as you exclude the stories placement or the reels placement, that
And I think what
impacts the delivery of the ad. And just because it looks good in feed doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get infinite results in feed if you take away stories and reels. And then you see that like it just tanks the performance. And it is so avoidable by leaning into catalog ads. And when you actually start to look at how much creative you get for your buck with them, if you actually start calculating, like if I wanted to get a designer to work on, you know, go back to my 250 from the beginning, 250 designs, how long would it take them to do that? Like you're talking, a decent amount of work. And then it's like, right. And then
yeah.
15 minutes later, we put another template in. So now we've got another 250. And then we put another one in, 250. And it's like, it's such an efficient way to deliver creative en masse, backed with all of this signal data that we've talked about. And it's just like, it becomes a no-brainer. But if you just think of it as, well, I can put a pretty picture up and I can put a logo, like you don't understand it. And that's the bit that, hopefully from listening today, people will understand that the platforms are crying out for creative volume, creative diversity. And one of the easiest ways to leverage it is plugging into something like Confect and really unlocking all of this power and this data. I think, yeah, Andreas, it's been such a pleasure to chat to you about this. I think we got really nerdy on a lot of the topics, but there's so many good insights here. And for people that want to follow along at home, or people who want to get their hands on the Black Friday Cyber Monday report, where can they find you? Where can they follow along? And most importantly, how do they get their hands on that report?
So first of all, thanks a ton for having me. This was an awesome chat. I really mean it. So they can find me on LinkedIn. Go search for Andreas Nielsen, maybe Confect. My profile picture is just me holding a big fish. So go look for that and just DM me. Then I'll send you the.
Amazing. Andreas, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Andy.